Yes, the World Cup may be starting today, a World Cup which England will win. However, you guys have still got your exams. You guys still need to fine tune your technique and give yourself the best possible chance of getting a grade 9. Well, we're on to Anita and Me and the trickiest comparative question. Let's get you full marks because you're watching Schofield on Shakespeare.
Here's what I will be covering in this invaluable video. As ever, you can skip to any section, but remember that each section does build on the other, and it probably makes more sense to watch it in full, making detailed notes. A reminder about how this question is marked. How do the settings and situations within the two texts compare? Do you show an understanding of the set text extract in relation to the text as a whole? And of course, your response is extremely well written, contains a sharp, focused argument and an excellent understanding of both extracts. Delightfully embedded, chosen for juiciness, quotations. Post-quotation, plenty of exploration of individual words, their effects, form and structure, resulting, of course, in a demonstration of a more detailed understanding of the extracts. More technical writing due to the accurate, regular use of subject terminology. Plus regular, intelligent toing and froing between the texts, not just separate paragraphs with a hopeful simile or in a different way between them, but actual comparisons. So here's the question we're going to use in this video. Compare how the difficulties of teenage friendships and growing up are presented in these two extracts. Before looking at the extracts, let's do some generic revision work on the theme of teenage friendships and growing up within Anita and Me as a whole. Here are some statements, possible topic sentence, which could be used in a generic essay title exploring the theme of friendship within Anita and Me. What other statements might you make about the presentation of friendships within the novel? Press pause to think independently or to discuss within the classroom. The video will resume in 5 seconds time. And here are some interesting quotations which you might incorporate within an essay on friendship. Let's explore each one in a bit more detail. For the first quotation, we are in Mr. Omerod's shop with Mina and Anita and that excruciatingly perfect pair, Pinky and Baby. Mina has just asked for some Brasso, something both she and Anita explicitly or implicitly realise that she doesn't need. Anita is smiling because she knows that Mina is planning independently for the very first time to take the initiative in their low-level hooliganism. And Mina senses this without having to look at Anita. These two, at this point in the novel, get and understand each other. Mina feels the glow of Anita's approval lighting up her face, leaving her cockily warm and happy. But this is currently an uneven friendship, with Mina in awe of this genuine white Tollington wench, who can also make her laugh like no one else. This second quotation comes from the notorious Anita-enforced peeing competition. There has been plenty of laughter at the expense of various participants, notably poor Tracy, whose poo stripe is exposed and cackled at. Here we get a sense about the pack mentality, hence the animalistic present participle sniffing, more typically used with dogs. This presentation of friendship isn't about support, but about survival of the fittest and brazenest. It's about spending time with others, knowing that in a second you could become the softer one to be laughed at and your weaknesses exposed. Here we move to the aunties, who collectively parent their children. These friends are united in their values and their beliefs, whereas the younger, largely white children in Tollington can shift friendships at the drop of a hat. Think of Anita and her rotating wheel of best friends. The aunties support and back each other up. Having experienced the struggles of making their way in a foreign, not always welcoming land, they instinctively gravitate towards each other and become each other's strongest supporters in the battle to give their children a better life than they themselves will have. What other quotations might you use when writing about friendships in the novel? Press pause to think independently and rapidly scan your text. The video will resume in 5 seconds' time. What about the theme of growing up? Here are some possible AO1 points for the novel as a whole. What other statements might you make about the theme of growing up within the novel? Press pause to think independently or discuss within the classroom. This video will resume in 5 seconds' time. And here are some interesting quotations which you might incorporate within an essay on growing up. Let's explore each one in a bit more detail. One of the paradoxes of growing up is that you want to grow up as quickly as possible, but then after a point regret having done so. In this quotation, we can see the frustration and embarrassment of not understanding something as a child and feeling excluded. Anita has just claimed that her father was the capstan sailor on a poster advertising cigarettes. Such a ludicrous claim and lie result in Sherry and Fat Sally bursting into side-hugging laughter. But young Mina has no idea why and feels stupid and left out. Hence the suggestion that she was 9 but felt 3.5. This quotation comes from the same part of the novel and follows Mina's brief conversation with Roberto, in which she asked him whether he missed the sea, having believed Anita's lie that he was the sailor in the cigarette display. She misinterprets his utterly underwhelming reply, which included an amusing reference to that shabby seaside destination in Wales, Rhyl, and fantasizes about his romantic sufferings and bravery. The detached older narrator Mina is clearly presenting her younger self with a degree of detachment and irony. This hyperbolic statement is so ridiculous that it makes us realize that we can struggle to view things from a proportional perspective when growing up. No one in their right mind would genuinely wish to be a tortured soul. This novel indicates that growing up unsure of your identity can cause particular angst. Note the very strong noun freak, meaning crazily, weirdly different, and how Mina feels lost between two very different worlds. When we grow up, we want to fit in. Mina can't, and this contributes to her risk-taking and occasional outbursts against her family. What other quotations might you use when writing about the theme of growing up within the novel? Press pause to think independently, rapidly scan your text. We'll resume in 5 seconds' time. How should you structure paragraphs? Well, here's a reminder. Don't fall into the trap of simply narrating the extract. No, look carefully at the question, whip out the highlighter pen to highlight keywords, and then start main paragraphs with a topic sentence which makes a clear, precise point that answers the question. Next, embed a quotation which backs up the point. Make sure you've chosen that quotation incredibly carefully so it lends itself to some probing. Next, AO2 analysis. Really show the examiner that you fully understand the meaning and effect of key, interesting, complex words from your quotation. Following your analysis of one of the texts, it's now time to compare. Think of the point you just made and now think, well, how does this come across within the other text? Is it similar or different? And then we follow the previous structure. So we need a quotation from the second text. And then we need to explore individual words from that quotation, explore their meaning and effects. But I think also it's quite nice to come back, having done that, to making an additional comparison with the first text. Enough from me. If you haven't already done so, time to have a go at writing this question yourself. So you have 45 minutes, and finally those two extracts are about to appear within 5-second intervals. It's pause time. Here's a sample student paragraph. Press pause to read this through. Plenty of positives here, including immediate comparisons, obvious focus on the question, lovely short embedded quotations, and in relation towards the penultimate paragraph, we have some insight into language. However, is the analysis sufficiently detailed? So here you can see the quotation, Rob was trying desperately not to cry, and all we've got here is the limp, clearly indicating sadness. Come on, there's more to say. Why is it that he's trying desperately not to cry? And perhaps we could use some subject terminology to pick out the adverb desperately and what that reveals about the theme of growing up and the importance of absolutely not showing weakness or emotion in front of your peers. Here's another student main paragraph. Press pause to read it now. As well as perhaps the points made previously, here I draw attention to excellent development of argument towards the end of this paragraph. I worried slightly that in the second half this pupil was moving away from answering the question, which is about friendships and about growing up, by referring to the way Rob moves towards the single males, but then you can see it's saved in the end there with this clever shift to pointing out that this is another dimension that actually really we can be very insecure when we are growing up. It's tricky in this question because on the one hand you do need to make regular comparisons, but on the other hand you still need to show detailed insight into each text, and I just felt there was more to say here about the colloquial noun practice run. Now the moment you've been waiting for, my response. In this extract from Anita and Me, Mina is devastated to find out that her best friend Anita has a boyfriend but has chosen not to tell her about it. In a different way, the extract from High Fidelity highlights the public humiliation of a boy finding out that his supposed girlfriend now has a new partner. In both extracts, the pain is accentuated by a failure of a friend or partner to adequately communicate. Mina clearly feels betrayed by Anita, and that their friendship has consisted merely of the scraps, the tokens, the lies. The use of the tricolon here illustrates the breadth of her feelings of betrayal. She feels as though Anita has only participated superficially within their friendship, with a hurtful readiness to deceive. Rob also feels betrayed, albeit by his first girlfriend rather than a friend. However, whereas in Anita and Me, the predominant emotions appear to be anger and pain, in High Fidelity, Rob seems embarrassed. We learn that he blushed and suddenly forgot how to walk without being aware of every single part of my body. The verb blushed indicates that he has gone uncontrollably bright red after seeing Alison with Kevin Bannister, whilst it is clear that he has become paralysingly self-conscious due to the shock of what he has learnt and his uncertainty about what he should do. Nonetheless, it is clear that Rob is upset by Alison's abrupt abandonment, hence a tricolon of palms sweating, heart racing, trying desperately not to cry. We get a sense of the 13-year-old boy's shock and physical reaction to the discovery. It has left him with palpitations and struggling to maintain his composure, so important with other teenagers watching. However, the narrator's reference to the boy's age opens up a distance between the narrator and his younger self. As this is his first girlfriend, the reader will know that there will be future relationships, presumably slightly more successful, thus reducing the amount of empathy for what happened. To some extent, the incident feels like a part of growing up, albeit an embarrassing, painful one. There is no such distance in Anita and Me, no older narrator looking back more wisely and calmly on the incidents and mishaps of youth. Genuine anger can be gleaned from phrases such as, "I was a convenient diversion, a practice run." Mina now believes that Anita saw their friendship just as a means of fine-tuning her technique, an opportunity to learn even more about manipulating others and making them want to spend time with her. She saw Anita as a genuine friend. Anita saw her as someone to use. It is notable that the revelations about the friendships come about in very different ways in the two texts. Whereas in Anita and Me, the epiphany arises following a direct question, albeit one which is not directly answered. In High Fidelity, no words are necessary, as Rob can see with his own eyes that Alison was sitting on the bench with her arm around the new boyfriend. The implication is clearly that their relationship wasn't important enough for Alison to take the trouble to tell him directly about her altered feelings, and this is a feeling shared by Mina in Anita and Me. The narrator writes within a stark compound sentence that my best friend in all the world really did have a boyfriend and had never told me. The use of the superlative best and the reference to the entire universe emphasizes just how important a person, a friend, Anita was to Mina. In contrast, pain seeps through the adverb never, highlighting the fact that Anita's decision to keep her relationship with Sam Lowbridge a secret was abundantly not to do with lack of opportunities to tell her so-called friend. Both extracts show that teenage friendships and relationships can end painfully, although Mina's disillusionment is far stronger than Rob's temporary embarrassment. It's all very well reading a full mark response, but from your perspective, you want to be thinking about what you can take from it. Are there perhaps any phrases that you might use, ways of writing, ways of structuring sentences? What about the level of detail? What about the detail within the topic sentence? And what about the way comparisons are made? Time for you to think, discuss. If you're with other people, press pause now. Time now to explore how this response meets the criteria within the mark scheme. We'll notice here that I'm showing an understanding of the text as a whole, and I'm putting a moment within the extract within the context of the text as a whole, partly by my referencing of Sam Lowbridge's name. So AO1 requires that sharp focus on the question, certainly within topic sentence, but also returning to the question towards the end, which is what I do succinctly within this extract on screen. Notice also that AO1 is about development of arguments, and again this is something that I do here when I point out that actually the fact that it's a first girlfriend and that Rob is so young, well actually there's going to be less empathy for him, because to some extent this seems just like a rite of passage that all of us have been through. Plenty of quotations of course are needed, making sure they're not too long. Notice how I've varied the phrasing of my sentence, which includes the quotation here, going for something less formulaic. Notice here the detail with which I analyze my quotation. Notice how this essay is packed with subject terminology, including the perhaps slightly gratuitous but helpful reference to a compound sentence. How clear are you about understanding the exact difference between a simple, compound, and a complex sentence? If you're not clear, do something about it. And I think one thing the response does very well is its sophisticated comparisons between texts. And you can certainly see that with this example on screen. I'm very partial to the whereas statement, which allows detailed points about two text to be crammed within one sentence. Here you can see that I'm making really quite a precise point about a difference, namely that in one of the texts there is a question in order to find out the heartache that can come from friendship, whereas the other one, it can be seen all too clearly just by looking.
So how can we sum things up just hours before the World Cup in Qatar starts? Well, what we're looking for, of course, is sharply focused arguments, an argument that develops, an argument that interweaves glorious comparisons between the text and embeds delicious quotations, probes them a little bit, and then just has short introductions and conclusions. I hope it's been useful. Best of luck for your exams. You've been watching Schofield on Shakespeare.